Well, welcome to you all. I'm so excited to start this webinar with you. And this whole webinar series, which is a three-part series, is called Breaking Through the Screen. And so everything that we've been sharing with you for the past two webinars and for today's webinar is about trying to engage your students in online English language learning. And so hopefully you have been a part of our previous two webinars, but if not, don't worry. You can always watch the recordings that we have, but just so you can see what the dozen tips are, they're right here on the screen. And so webinar 1, we went through tips 1 through 6. The last webinar last week, we did tips 7, 8, and 9. And so today, we are going to be focused on tips 10, 11, 12, and the bonus tip, number 13, which makes what we call a baker's dozen. So before we begin the webinar, we would like to know a few things about you. And so, as you know, today's webinar is about building a supportive online community. And many of you might know, as you are teaching online, that sometimes learning online can leave your students feeling perhaps isolated, or maybe they don't feel supported. And so what we're going to try to do is to help you to be able to create a supportive and a warm, inviting environment for your students to be engaged in. So, as I said, we want to know a little bit about all of you here with us today. So first, I'd like you to fill out this poll, just so we know whether or not you've attended both of the previous webinars. Did you only attend one webinar, the first one, or the second one, or perhaps you haven't attended either of the two? This will just help us know if you have seen the information before. So I can see here, okay. So 37% of you about attended both previous webinars. Excellent. Some of you attended 1 and 2. And of course, some of you haven't been to any of the previous webinars, but don't worry. You can just pick up where we left off. No problem. All right, so we have a lot of first timers here. Well then, welcome to the webinar. Now, we wanted to ask a couple of things before we start talking about building a supportive online community. So our next poll I'd like you to take part in is about how often do your students ask for technological support? How often are they asking you how to get here or what to click on there? Maybe they have trouble logging in. Let's see. Okay, it looks like, yeah, for many of you, it's occasionally, and some of you are saying a moderate amount. I see we still have more votes coming in. But yeah, occasionally a moderate amount. Of course, maybe not a great deal because you've given them an orientation to whatever software apps you're using. All right, so that's very interesting. We have one last poll before we begin the content of this webinar. And so this one is about, do you provide online office hours? Meaning, it's just like office hours face-to-face in a classroom, right? When you have either your classroom or your office, and students can either pop in or make an appointment with you. So I see that looks like the majority of you are saying, no, you don't hold online office hours, but a lot of you do, about 40%. Okay, because that's another thing we're going to talk about in terms of providing online support for your students. It looks like we're really rounding out to about 60% of you saying no. Okay, so maybe we can give you some tools for doing that. All right, so Jared, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll.
Hi, everyone, especially those of you that are new and those of you coming back for another webinar. It's a great privilege to be here with you. So one thing that I do is I do a lot of research on online learning. And one thing that comes up over and over again is that students in online courses tend to underperform compared to students in in-person courses. They tend not to pass the courses at the same rates. And there's really one big reason for that. There's lots of little reasons, but a big reason why is that not only are they asked to learn the material, but they are asked to learn how to learn online at the same time. So in essence, they're taking a course on the content and then a course on how to learn online. And that can be really challenging for students to do both, especially if they're children. That can be extremely challenging. So one thing we want to do for them is to make sure that when they get stuck with something, they know how to help themselves. So here is a short video that kind of drives the point home. This is about, I'll just call this stuck on an escalator.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left.
Okay, so some of you have seen that video before. I love this. How often do students get stuck and the first thing they do is ask you for help? And then you ask them, well, what have you tried yourself to solve that problem, right? And oftentimes they say nothing. They hadn't even thought of that before, that they can actually solve their own problems. So one policy that you can implement in your online courses is the 3 before me policy, which basically says if they encounter a technological issue or any other question, really, they can do 3 things before they ask you. One is just play. So if it's a technological issue, just click around. You'd be surprised at how often that actually solves the issue. Or they can open it in a new browser. That happens quite often as well. That'll solve the problem as well. The second thing you want them to do is to search. So go online and search for an answer. You'd be surprised at how often they'll find a discussion board with someone with the same problem or a video walking them through how to resolve that issue. So that can be really helpful. They're not with you, but they're also with somebody else probably. And so number 3 is for them to ask for help from someone close to them, a parent or a sibling or something like that. And if you're teaching at a university level, it might be a partner or even their child, right? So they can ask for help from somebody. And then once they've done those 3 things, they can come to you and ask you. But I always ask if it's something, I'll say, what have you done to kind of help with this? Here's what I recommend doing, right? And so then that can kind of help them to answer their own questions, but it also frees your time up quite a bit to really tackle those more challenging questions. The other thing, we mentioned virtual office hours, so it looked like many of you are already doing this. You can have virtual office hours using Skype or Google Hangout or Zoom. These are really popular tools that are free to use. Your school or school district might provide you with a program such as Adobe Connect or Blackboard Collaborate or WebEx. Those are also really great. What's nice about all these tools is that you can actually set up a permanent URL that you can use repeatedly throughout the course. So once you have the URL, you have to decide when can I go in there and meet with students. So there's a couple different strategies you can use. One strategy is by appointment. So you're not going to be sitting in the room until someone schedules an appointment with you. So you can use a tool called Doodle. And what Doodle does is it links to your calendar. And so you'll see here, this is my actual calendar, and I've got some times blocked off. It doesn't tell the students why I'm not available during that time, but it just says that you can't schedule a time then. But if they schedule any other times, what will happen is it'll automatically be placed on my calendar, and it'll send an email notification to me and to the student, and also add it to the student's calendar. So that can be really helpful, and this is a free tool that I use quite often, and it saves me a lot of time. The other thing is that you can set up times on your own. You can just decide, I'm going to have my office hours on Monday evening at 7 o'clock, or I'm going to meet Wednesday morning at 10, or I'm going to have lunch on Friday. I'm going to be in my office waiting for you, right? Quote unquote office. And then you can just open the room and just see who comes. And if no one comes, that's okay. You can still respond to email. You can do other things, but you're there, and students know that you're there. And what's nice about virtual office hours is teaching online, you can sometimes feel like you have to be available all the time, 24 hours a day. That's not realistic, and that can really make you tired and make you feel exhausted when you're teaching online. So what this does is it sets certain times. You want to certainly be available to students via email multiple times a day and synchronously in these office hours, but you don't have to feel like you have to respond at all times. Another important thing, I can't overestimate how important feedback is. And so to help us remember a good way to give feedback, we've created the feedback burger. So I'm an American, I love burgers. My wife is a vegetarian, so I think about burgers all the time, especially when I'm traveling. Without her, I'll always find the burger restaurant. But with this feedback burger, there's 5 steps to providing good feedback. 1 is building relationships, greeting the student. Hello, how are you? 2, providing specific praise, not general praise, not way to go, but specific praise. 3 is specific corrections, things that they can improve. 4 is general praise. So once you provide them with corrections, you want to remind them that they did a good job, right? So hey, these were minor corrections, but you did really well on everything else. And then the last thing is providing support, saying, okay, I'm here whenever you need help, just let me know. So something simple like that can really help to make sure that your feedback is well received and applied. So if you went to webinar 2, you remember Chrissy, we're going to see a video comment that she provided to her students. What she did is she actually did video feedback, which is great. She used Screencast-O-Matic, but you can also use a tool like Loom to provide feedback. And one reason why this is really important is that students were creating a website. And so the screencasting video actually allows her to provide a lot of context in there. So as I play this, just see, how does she do on the feedback burger?
Hi, boys and girls. You did such a great job in book clubs. You had wonderful conversations, and you worked really hard on your website that you created on Double Dutch. So I'm just going to go over some of it with you. It's really like your layout and the topics that you chose to break down your website. Really great job. And I also really loved how you included some videos and articles to this interactive image for us to explore more, because I found myself, when you were telling me about the history of Double Dutch, wanting to see some of it. So this was really great. I also love the images that you included and these other videos here to help show us a little bit more about Double Dutch if it was something that we wanted to get started on, and the information that you included about what types of materials that I need. The skit that you included going over the book was absolutely phenomenal. Wonderful job. I'm really looking forward to sharing it with our entire class. So one suggestion that I have is that when you did the book review, I really would have loved to see just a little bit more from you guys if you could work together to expand on this. So, but overall, fantastic job. I'm here to support you. So if you have any questions, please make sure that you guys come see me. Thank you.
So some of you couldn't see the video. I apologize for that. Joan was telling me she couldn't see the video either. So, but there is a link there that you can click on and watch that video. But if you could see it, she gave very specific feedback, but in a warm way. It almost felt like you were sitting next to her and she was going through your project. So that can be a really great way to provide feedback online. When text it might be difficult to do many of those things in text. Okay, Joan?
All right, I'm back. So another way that you can create a productive and positive learning community is to encourage students to give peer feedback. Give feedback on each other's work to each other. So one technique you can use is called PQP. So it's easy to remember. PQP. PQP stands for praise, question, and polish. And sometimes it's not so easy for peers to give feedback to each other. So the more structured it is, the better. And this is an easy way that you can get your English language students at any level to give feedback. Now, you'll see here, it has some similarities to the feedback burger. So first, you start with the first P, praise. First, tell your classmate at least one thing you liked about his or her piece. And then Q stands for question. So then you ask your classmate a question about something you didn't understand in his or her piece. And then the last P stands for polish. Give your classmate one suggestion for polishing or making the piece even better. Now, I just used some Bitmojis to create icons, and you could do the same that look like you. Now, by piece, I mean it could be a piece of writing, a project, a presentation, a poem, anything that you have given as an assignment in your class. So let me give you an example. Now, let's say you have a piece of writing. Here's one. Okay, and you might remember this if you were in webinar 2 because you would have seen a girl, my daughter Ilsa, in the video. And so she said, and I'll read it out loud so that you, if you can't read it well, you can hear it. It says, "Hi, I'm Ilsa, and I have Snowy Belle, my barn owl, my favorite toy. Let me tell you a little bit about barn owls. They can turn their heads 360 degrees and they hunt for mice. They have sharp claws or talons and a sharp beak. Well, I have to go and feed her. Bye-bye." So the example you give for students, because they need also a language model as well as a feedback model, is you can write "I liked," okay, and you give that sentence starter. "I liked your choice of animal. You had interesting details about barn owls." Q. "Why did you name your barn owl Snowy Belle?" And then the second P, polish. "Do barn owls only eat mice? How about adding other things barn owls eat?" So you see, it's something to polish or make the writing better. So with your students, you have to make sure that you give them a model. And in this case, for lower level English language learners, you can give them sentence starters to help them. Now, let's say you want to give a model for older learners. You can do it in the same way. Obviously, it's more text. You're expecting more from your higher level learners, but you can use the same technique, PQP. So notice, it doesn't matter if you can't read it specifically, but you're giving a model with sentence starters like, "Oh, I really like," "Nice work," "Good job." Or for question, "I'm unclear about why you did something. Why did you do this? Do you see what I mean?" And then for polish, you could include ... "You may not want to ... And then perhaps keep it positive. "I learned a lot, and I hope my suggestion is helpful." So here you see you can give sentence starters to give your students a kickstart so that they know how to use PQP effectively. All right, I'm going to pass this back to Jared.
Who has seen this before? So if you ever go to IKEA, you'll see dozens of these. You'll see lots and lots of these. And you see more and more of them in just any store. There's opportunities to provide feedback on your shopping experience. So we see that more and more in our daily lives. However, we don't really provide students with many opportunities to provide feedback. If students are lucky, we'll give them a mid-course evaluation survey or an end-of-course survey or something like that. But if, in the moment when they're really frustrated and something isn't working, we don't give them opportunities to kind of express that. In a face-to-face environment, you can see it on their faces, but online, You can't really do that all the time. So one thing that I've done in my courses that I would suggest you do as well, is I have a fixes and tips link in my course. It's there all the time. And basically what it is it's like a suggestion box. Whenever they see something wrong, it might be something as simple as a misspelled word or a hyperlink that isn't working, or it could be something major like, I don't like this course for these reasons, or this assignment is really frustrating for me for these reasons, or I don't like my partner for A, B, C, and D reasons. And so they can click on that. It can be totally anonymous. They don't have to put their name. I give them an option to make it anonymous, and that's fine. Most people do. And then I give them a space to type in their answer. So it's simple, but I'm surprised at how many people actually take me up on that. Okay, so now we're going to move into synchronous and asynchronous. So providing a structure and a rhythm to students, tip number 11. That is very different in a synchronous or live course, like what we're doing right now, or if you're using Zoom or Blackboard Ultra or things like that, versus asynchronous or on-demand, when you place materials online for students to access any time of the week when it's most convenient for them, where each page might have a video, not a live video, but a video recording and things like that. So before we go on to this tip, we'd really like to know what your courses are like. So we have another poll. And in this poll, we're going to ask, are your courses mostly live, synchronous, or asynchronous or on demand, or is it a nice balance between the two? All right, synchronous came out, but asynchronous is kind of coming from behind there. So it looks like we have both here, and that's great. And some of you are actually having a nice balance or a blend between those two. So that's really fantastic. But it does look like about half of you are using real-time, maybe video classes, live synchronous classes, and that's great too. There's some advantages and disadvantages to that, and we'll talk about those a little later as well. So thank you. Okay, John.
Hey, I'm back again. Okay, so many of you are doing live synchronous classes. So maybe you're interacting with your students much like we are here, or maybe you even have them on videos and can see them. Now, something that maybe you haven't thought of is that you got to think about your routines, right? How are you managing your class in this virtual space? And if you're doing it synchronously, you could use some similar routines that you might use in your face-to-face, in-person class. So here you see on the screen that I have what I call a routine chart. So of course you have your lesson plan, right? You have a certain lesson objective and the vocabulary and grammar you're teaching and your warm-up and your presentation and practice. But maybe in addition to planning your lesson, you can plan the routines that you're going to use around your lesson. Okay, so you can, of course, make a plan for taking attendance. Maybe you do that like a regular roll call, or maybe you have your students to type that they're here in the chat so you can check them off one by one. Or maybe you're going to have a particular greeting, or you're going to plan something like a farewell that you do every time. Let's take a look at some ideas of what you can do. So if you want to start every class with a routine, maybe with older learners, you want to know how people are feeling. As they're logging in, you can greet them and ask them how they are. One tip I can give you is to use something like a feel wheel to try to increase their vocabulary so that every time they come and you say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" they don't say, "I'm good, I'm fine, I feel happy," and use the same words every time. So take a look at the feel wheel and tell me, how do you feel? Just give me one word showing me how you feel. Because maybe I feel happy, or I could say, I'm feeling confident today. Valued. Awesome. Energized. Overwhelmed. Oh, okay. I hope we can help you if you're feeling overwhelmed. Content. Powerful. Optimistic. I love it. Curious. It's going so fast. All right. So it seems like you like the words in the feel wheel. So you can ask your students to type in or say a word. You could have them make a complete sentence using a word from the feel wheel. You could ask them to share one object. So maybe I'm feeling a little bit hot, so I'm going to share this fan I got from China to show and to let you know I'm feeling a little hot today. Or a picture share. All right, so it's another way to get students to share how they feel. They can either type it in the chat box or tell you if they can use video and audio. If you have very young learners that you're trying to engage online, how many of you are teaching very young learners? Well, you could start out every class with a song. I'm going to teach this to you. It's the hello song, and it goes to La Cucaracha. It goes like this. Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Hello, hello, how are you? I'm very good, yeah, I'm very good, yeah. Thank you very much, and you. Cha-cha-cha. Okay, so that's the hello song. Now, maybe a student feels a little bit tired. They could change their response, all right? So it could go like this. Hello, how are you? Hello, how are you? Hello, hello, how are you? And the student can answer, I'm very tired, yawn. I'm very tired, yawn. Thank you very much, and you. All right, so it's another way to start the class with a routine that students like when they're young. Now, you might also still need things like attention getters. Maybe you have students doing a little bit of a writing activity, but you want to get their attention back to the screen. You can use the call and response where I say, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. And then you have to respond, 1, 2, eyes on you. Okay, let me try it once. 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. 1, 2, eyes on you. Okay, and then students have to look back at the screen. Or simple things like a bell, okay, or like a whistle. Something to get their attention back to the screen because they might have gotten distracted. You might also want to prepare some routines like brain breaks. We do this in our face-to-face class, but students still need a brain break, and it can be useful to transition from one activity to the next. Something that's really great about brain breaks online is that some of us have very small classrooms, so you can't get students to stand up because there's too many desks and chairs in the way. Well, they're at home, and they might have plenty of space to get up and stretch. You can do some yoga poses, right? If they've been writing, you could do a shake, shake. Shake your hands for 3 seconds. Shake it to the side. Shake it to the side. 1, 2, 3. Or even get them to give their brains a break by doing a little difficult thing like the nosy ear, right? You put one finger on your nose and one finger on the other ear, and then you have to switch. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and then you switch. All right, so these are just some fun ways to give your students a brain break. Okay, use the same ones you would use in a face-to-face class. Now, at the end of your lesson, a great routine to do every class is to have an exit ticket, right? This is like a ticket you have to earn before you can exit the room, in this case, log out. Okay, and also it gives you a chance to assess their learning. So it's an easy assessment routine. You use at the end of every class, and you could do anything to have students show that they learned something before they log out. So maybe you're going to get them to submit a paper they were working on. Once it pops up in your email, they get the exit ticket and permission to leave the room. You could ask them a question about a story you read them in class, and they have to answer one question in the chat box, and until they write the sentence, they don't get permission to log out. Or they look at a picture card and have to say the correct word. All right, so it's a great way to assess as well as make a routine so that they have to do something before they log out. And finally, always good to have a farewell routine. You could say goodbye in a special way to each student before they log off and you give them permission, or you could do a little chant to end your class. This one goes like this. You were wonderful. You were great. See you next class and don't be late. All right, why don't you say that with me? Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. You were wonderful. You were great. See you next class and don't be late. Okay, I think I heard you all doing that with me. All right, now I'm going to pass.
I'm glad that none of you left. Thank you for saying, but I do love the video. So we've used lots of polls in our webinars, so we try to do that to engage you. Sometimes the tool that you're using doesn't have many polling features. So there are tools like Mentimeter that have lots of polling options that you can use that are free, that you can integrate into your live sessions with your students. Oftentimes, these tools will also have breakout rooms. So similar to in an in-person course where you'll say, okay, now I'm going to group you in groups of 3 or 4, and I want you to do this activity. You can do the same thing in tools like Zoom, where you put them in breakout rooms of 3 or 4 students and have them do a task and then come back. And just like in class where you walk around to check on the different groups, you can do the same thing in these breakout rooms. You can click on the links and just see and hear what's going on in each of the rooms. Another tip that I recently learned from Teresa Wills here at George Mason University is that when she starts her class, she actually uses a Google Slides. So the first thing she'll do is she'll share a Google Slides with everyone, and anyone with a link can edit the slides. So she'll have activities built into the presentation slides, and then students can add to the slides. They can add images, add text, whatever. They can even create new slides. And so as they work together, you can watch the Google Slides. You can see the work on the Google Slides. And so it's a really great way to keep students engaged during these activities and have them collaborate even when they're not together. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about asynchronous. So again, this is on demand. There are learning platforms, oftentimes they're called learning management systems or LMSs. And within an LMS, there's lots of features like gradebooks and assignments and directions. There's content. You can interact with your teacher or with your students, and students can interact with each other, all within one website. So they go to one place for all of those things. If you use a learning management system, that's great. You already have one. If you don't and you're interested in trying one out, there are some free ones that are really great. So I use Canvas's Free for Teacher account. Mason University is a Blackboard university, but sometimes I'll use Canvas. And in there, I've created dozens of courses, and they're all free. And I know that there's some features that I don't have access to, but it doesn't feel like that when I'm in the course. Course Sites is another great one. This is by Blackboard that I've also used when I'm working with students outside of the university. And again, there's lots of options in there, so it doesn't feel like it's the free version. It actually feels like it's the paid version, but it's not. So here is a course that Joan has created, and you'll notice that she has a nice rhythm. You'll notice Module 1 overview, kind of an introduction. There's probably a video there walking students through what they need to be doing. Then you'll see tasks. So task 1 is that they watch a video. Task 2, they read some articles. In task 3, they have a self-assessment, like a quiz that they take until they get 100% on it. Or there's a discussion activity, an asynchronous discussion. And then there's an assignment where they post something about their learning environment profile. So you'll notice that it's very clear, task 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in the next module, guess what? Some of those similar tasks will still be there for them. Another thing that Joan does that's really great is that she will have a checklist at the end where you can check off, did I do these things? So in a way that's similar to an exit ticket where students know that they have to do these things before they're done. Because asynchronously or an on-demand course, sometimes it's easy to forget something. And you'll see the layout is really clear. She has the videos, what they should be looking for in the videos, and then they can watch the videos there. So another platform that isn't quite a full learning management system, but it's Google Classroom. I know that Google isn't accessible everywhere. I'm just curious, who uses Google Classroom or Google Drive, Google Documents? They're quite popular with teachers because they're free. So, okay, not surprisingly, a lot of you are using this. And it keeps getting better and better, right? So let me show you some examples of Google Classroom and Google Drive, how you can use these together. So this is a website that anyone can create using Google Sites. And you'll notice that this teacher had lessons. Each link here is a different lesson. And then look at the page. Look how it doesn't feel overwhelming. It has nice headings, bullet pointed text, but she starts each lesson with the audio orientation, where you can listen to what they're doing. You can hear her voice, and she kind of explains things to you. Then there's tasks, like when you're done with this assignment, you will know these things, which is really great. And then different activities that they do throughout the week. So one, it might be watching some videos and answering some questions. Here is reading, and here's another one, reviewing, and then it ends with an assessment. So very similar to what Joan did in her learning management system in Canvas. You can do this on a Google Site website. That's really, really simple. This was created by a student of mine, Katie. You can see her Twitter account. It's worth a follow. She does a lot of book reviews, and she's a librarian. She's really helpful. So this is another one. This is in Google Classroom. So this is their version of Canvas or Blackboard. But it's also free in most countries. And so here you have the start of the lesson. It's a video showing what students are going to be doing, walking them through some things, and then has different links throughout for different content or activities. So for instance, you thought I was strange talking about burgers. Now I'm talking about Oreo cookies, right? So not to make you even more hungry than you were before. But here he used this graphic, this infographic to kind of show what he wanted them to do, the process of persuasion. But then he also had a hyper document that he linked into the Google Classroom. So this is a Google document. And then in here, he has links to assignments and then places for them to type and to fill it all out. And then at the very end, he also has a checklist similar to what Joan does in her courses. So one thing about asynchronous courses is oftentimes we leave it open so that students can just complete assignments whenever they want, and we don't really have any deadlines until the end of the semester. That's actually not a great approach. That's really difficult for a lot of students to do. I think it's better to have a specific start time and deadline for assignments. And so when you start, you can actually start with a video, right? Kind of orienting them to what they will be doing, letting them know. You can also do some reminders and then end with a deadline. So I'm going to show you just a really quick video of a teacher that I actually found on Twitter. I don't know her, but it was on Twitter. And I thought it was a great example of what a video orientation could be.
Correct way, 6th grade, listen up. There's a brand new challenge just posted in Google Classroom for you to try out that involves an ice cube. So take a look at that. That is really an awesome challenge that I want you to try out. And then make sure that you also share with us what you did on Flipgrid. Also coming this afternoon, there's going to be a new part of our chapter of the Mysterious Phonetic Society just recorded to read aloud for you. So make sure that you get ready to curl up and get lost into our story. So check our Google Classroom page, make sure that you see our updates that are posted daily, different activities and different challenges for you to take a look at in the time of boredom that you might be experiencing. Talk soon.
Isn't that fun? I mean, I saw that. I want to know what we're doing with ice cubes, right? I don't know. I want to read that book. She makes it really interesting. I want to do those things. So video orientations can really be engaging for students to get them excited about the learning activities. Okay, tip number 12 is leveraging the power of online discussions. I think in class, we know that discussions are important, right? Learning is social, we know that. And so discussions are a big part of that. And we can have some great discussions. So look at this picture of this great discussion that's happening. I know it's a great discussion because look at everyone raising their hands, trying to speak. You know, that's fantastic. However, when you think about it, we have these 6 people raising their hands. Look at number 6. She's actually holding her arm up with her other arm. She must have been holding her hand up for quite a long time, and she wasn't called on, right? So one problem with these type of discussions is that not everyone can comment, not everyone can participate. Sadly, not all 6 of these students are going to say what they want to say or ask a question that they want to ask. So that can be a big challenge. The other downside is when students aren't participating, they can start drifting off. They can start thinking about other things or maybe even falling asleep because it's a very passive way of learning for them, right? So when we look at online discussions, it's very different. You can have live discussions, but we encounter some of the same challenges as we do in person. Students getting distracted or they're not able to participate as much as they would like. But what we're going to talk about for a moment is asynchronous or on-demand discussions where people will answer questions when they have time and then they can think about their responses and then post replies. So this can be done in text like we see here, but it can also be done in video where people are posting video comments there. So for now, we're going to focus on asynchronous. Not that live video comments aren't good. They can be really fantastic. But let's take a moment just to focus on asynchronous. So one thing that's great about asynchronous conversations is that it's more equitable, meaning everyone has time to participate. It's not that one student is going to dominate all the time in the class, that everyone has time to post their comments. And also, if your students are still developing their English or their language abilities, it can be really helpful for them to have time to hear what's going on, think about it, and then post a comment, where that's not really possible in fast-moving conversations. Okay, so we have a poll here. And again, this poll is going to be focusing on those on-demand discussions, asynchronous discussions, where students post comments for other people to read, other students to read on their own time. So I'm really curious how many of you are doing this, if you could let me know in the poll. So again, this is not a Zoom call or something like that. This is, you post a question online and then students go on and respond to that question and they can read their peers' comments and then they respond to those at different times during the week. Okay, so about a quarter of you are doing that. That's great. Many of you are not, but maybe this is a good opportunity for you to do that. I'm curious about the quarter of you that do. How are students commenting? Are they using text, audio, or video? Because typically it's text, but there are some great tools that are using video where you can post video comments that are really helpful, and I'm going to show you some of those in just a moment. Okay, great. Perfect. So again, mostly text, but some of you are doing audio or video, so that's really great. So one thing you have to remember is when you're posting a question that you want them to respond to, it has to be a good question because it can't be a yes or no question. They can't answer it really quickly. It has to be something that they can discuss and that they can share different ideas. So Joan was sharing some sentence starters. Here's some sentence starters as well. Like imagine or suppose, or what do you think about, or what is your opinion about something? These are really helpful starters for questions that aren't answered with a simple yes or no.
Great. So One of the discussion board techniques that I love to use and that I've done a little bit of research on the use of them in asynchronous discussions is called the starter wrapper technique. And when you use this approach, the focus is on having your students be moderators in the discussion. So when you have a student-led discussion, the hope is that the discussions will be more engaging and will be more relevant and interesting for your students. So you always pick 2 moderators for each discussion, and especially if it lasts for 1 week of instruction. And the starter, of course, starts the discussion. So if you started your week on a Wednesday, maybe you have the starter post either an interesting question or pose a problem related to the topic of your lesson, and then keep the discussion going by replying to classmates' posts and keep the discussion going through Monday. And then, much like these runners in a relay race, then the starter will pass off the baton to the wrapper. So then the wrapper will then pick up on the discussion on Monday, and they'll both be answering questions, but then the wrapper is going to keep the discussion going, try to move the discussion towards resolution or to find solutions for the problems or answers to the questions, and then wrap it up and even summarize the discussion for everyone. And so in this way, 2 students can start and wrap. And one of the things that's important for you as an English language teacher is to provide a model of this type of role. So whenever I use the starter wrapper technique, I always model the first unit myself, and I'll do like the starter post in blue and then the wrapper post in green, so students can see how I function from Thursday to Monday and then pick up on the discussion and wrap it up Monday through Wednesday. Now, if you take a look here, there are some important things to model to make sure you are creating a good environment for discussion, that you're building a sense of community on the discussion board. So one thing that's a great thing to model and to do is to do a salutation and use the name of a person that you're responding to. That always helps people to feel a part of the community. Seems simple, but let's not forget to do that. Also, you might start with a compliment, okay, and point out something that you loved about what the person said, okay? So this is similar to maybe the PQP. Start with some praise. Now, another thing that's good to show you read the person's post is to include a direct quote. So you said, I loved it when you said, and then you put the direct quote showing you read and you thought about what somebody wrote. And then you could agree or even disagree, that's okay, but you state how you feel about that statement, and then perhaps add a little bit more ideas to it, and then move on to asking a question. So now, after I've thought about what you said and I added my own thoughts, here's a question for you. And then, of course, inviting a response from the whole class, from everybody, right? I can't wait to hear your answers. Please share your ideas. So in modeling this, it helps to invite more participation, and you're giving students a language model as well for how to be a good moderator of a discussion. Now, another idea for the discussion board, and this might connect to the first module if you were here, about transforming activities and encouraging creativity. So on the discussion board, you could give students a choice. Okay, here is an example of a choice activity where students can respond to the question related to a reading, but they could pick one of the following ways. They could create a visual, whether they draw it or find a photo. They could write a poem. They could make a tweet-like expression. They could do 1-minute media, audio clip or video clip, or any other creative way that isn't just writing a response, and then post it, and to show that they understood the content but also can be creative. And so here's a couple of examples. from a choice activity I did. So one is an infographic that a student made using PictoChart, and you can see pictochart.com there. And so they created it to make something that actually looks like it could be a poster or a bookmark that other people can use. And also somebody posted a video. Here's the video example of one of my students who wrote and performed a song.
Teacher, oh teacher, why don't you recognize? I said, teacher, oh teacher, why don't you recognize? You're gonna do wrong by your students if your lessons you don't individualize.
All right, so sorry, I won't play the whole song because we don't have time. But as you can see here, students can find creative ways to express their understanding of the content. All right, Jared, here you go.
Okay, so we mentioned before that there are tools where you can post videos instead of text comments. These are three that are really great. Flipgrid is really popular. VoiceThread is a little different because you add slides and then students comment on those slides. EdConnect is brand new. It's a tool that I've been using and actually working with them to refine a little bit, but that's another great option. So you can explore each of these three and find what works for you. I'm just going to show you some examples. So here's VoiceThread. Like I said, there are slides and then people comment on slides. So that's a really helpful way to do some activities, especially direct instruction. This video is probably my favorite, and it's using Flipgrid. And here's a student that used the pause button brilliantly. So he actually wrote an entire script, and he played both parts just by hitting the pause button and then switching around. So let's see if we can pull that up.
Where's the quadrilaterals? Got them right here. Quadrilaterals. Joking, right? What? I got your quadrilaterals, dude. These are not quadrilaterals. These are triangles. Aren't they the same thing? No, this is a triangle. This is a quadrilateral. Okay, I got your quadrilateral. This is a quadrilateral. Look, this is the one you gave me. This is the one I brought. They're the same thing. Oops. Listen, quadrilateral is a shape with 4 sides and it's closed. It also has 4 angles. Jeez. Okay, fine. I got scissors. Let me give you your quadrilateral. Look, boom, 4 sides, 4 angles, and it's closed. Happy? Technically, since it does have 4 sides and 4 angles and it is closed, that also counts as a quadrilateral. Not all quadrilaterals are rectangles or squares. Gee, that guy did not know anything about shapes. He took my wallet.
He took my wallet. So he is amazing, right? But he was really creative. And so using video, you can do things that you simply can't do in text. So I really wanted to take the time to show you that example. Due to some time limitations, I'm not going to show you some of these, but maybe we can put the link box up where you can access some icebreaker activities. If you scroll down, there's an icebreaker activity that I did where I actually showed students something rather than just speaking to them. And Rick's icebreaker activity is also really great, where he asked students to post comments that are talking about what they're grateful for in this difficult time. Those will also be in the blog posts as well. Okay, so tip number 13 is don't do it alone. This is our Baker Dozen tip. This is what we're going to end with. Just like the Avengers need each other's help every once in a while, you also need other people's help while you're teaching online. This is a big challenge. So don't try to do it alone. One thing that you can do is set up a Zoom call or a video call with other teachers in your building. Don't have an agenda. Just set it up to meet casually and talk about what's going well and what isn't going well, right? So that could be a real powerful tool, and I highly recommend doing that. Okay, Joan?
Yeah, and so, of course, don't do it alone. Imagine yourself as well as parents of your students who are going through things much like you, I'm sure. And maybe when we first had the shutdown, day one, you're like, yay, I get to hang out with my kids and family, and I'm so happy to be home and not at work. And then by day three, you might be like my dog Sherlock and thinking, ugh, how am I going to get through this? All right, so if you were at my previous webinar, you saw my dog Sherlock before, and I thought it'd be fun to end on this because think about your students as well as their parents and reach out to them. Give them tips, give them information to also help students through this process. So we're all one big community. As you can see here, we are a big global community. We just have to reach out to each other to give each other support. So reach out to the parents of your students, reach out to your students, reach out to your fellow teachers and get together with them as well. And hopefully there will be many ways you can reach out to other teachers. So you can stay connected, of course, with National Geographic Learning through all the different social media channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, WeChat, YouTube, as well as to see the webinars that we have done previously. Also, this webinar will be recorded. Also, there are many other webinars on that website. And Jared and I have also put together follow-up blogs for each of the 3 webinars. So you can also read a little bit more and get some of the links that you may feel that you missed during the webinar. And we will be including as much as we can in those blogs so that you can easily see the videos and find the resources. So please take those down. And I think that afterwards, right, Emily? You will also get links to those.
Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks so much, Joan
All
and Jared.
right,
I know it's
so
been
that's
great
it,
these past
guys.
3 weeks,
This
and I
was
hope
the
you all have
Baker's
enjoyed these
dozen
webinars and found them
tips
useful
for
to your practice
engaging
as you go
students in online learning.
As Joan mentioned,
And
we do
I
have
hope
the
you
other
feel that
recordings from
you
the
found
previous 2
a lot of
sessions
new
up on our
ways to
webinar
break
site.
through the
Put the
screen
link in before. I'm
and
just gonna flip
engage
back to it
your
quickly
English
now. You can
learners
check them out there,
online.
along with the corresponding blog post too. And we'll actually get this webinar recording up tomorrow, and we'll be emailing that to you as well. We'll also email you a link to the blog post and a certificate for joining us today. And one just follow-up note, Jared, do you want to touch on the feedback survey?
Yeah, so you will be given a survey, a short survey right after this, but in a day or two, we'll be sending out a little bit longer survey that'll probably take 10 or 15 minutes to complete. But please take the time to do that. We'd love to hear your experiences teaching online and how these webinars have helped or maybe haven't helped, so that we can better inform future resources that we provide to teachers that are in similar situations. So we're all in this together, and we just want to spend a little bit more time getting to know you and your experience and how we can better help you.
Great. So everyone be on the lookout for that. We'll be emailing it to you in the next day or so. Great. And just a final note here, we do have another webinar presented tomorrow by Alex Warren. If you've attended webinars in the past, you've probably seen him. He's great. He's a teacher trainer, and it's on teaching your course book online. We're offering the session twice in a day like we usually do. I'm just going to put the registration link in there now, and that's up on our website as well. So definitely be sure to register for that. We'd love to see you again. Great. Thanks everyone for joining and for all the wonderful feedback. And thanks, Jared and Joan.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.